Welcome to the Useful Podcast. So today I'm here with Carter. Basically, Carter has an interesting story for the last 6 months, for the last couple of years you've been building, but for the last 6 months, you've kind of taken off in both tech communities and traveling across a couple of different continents and doing a couple of different things. So yeah, so before all of that, I'm kind of curious, before any of the tech stuff, you moved to Calgary as a kid in 2007.
hmm
For someone, what was that like for you, and how do you think that changed, or how do you think that impacted you?
Right. So I guess I'll start off from when I was really, really young. We immigrated to Canada, to Vancouver first. And then I spent a couple years there. As you know, Vancouver is like a very immigrant-heavy city, so there's a lot of people from abroad. I didn't really have to learn English while I was in Vancouver, even though I was going to elementary school there. And then my dad got a job over here in Calgary. So after he stayed for about 6 months, he decided to move the whole family over. And I was put into an environment where there weren't as many immigrants, right? So Calgary traditionally has had less immigrants than other cities. And so I had to pick up English really quickly. So believe it or not, English is like my third language. I speak Mandarin and Cantonese. And I learned it really when I was 6 or 7 years old. And so for me, that was a little bit of a culture shock, even though I had been in Canada for a long time. It was the start of my journey sort of as a Canadian here. And I learned so quickly. I think that's sort of what shaped my perception on things as well. I could go on, but yeah, like that's sort of, yeah, it's what it is.
Kind of curious, do you view yourself as Canadian, or do you view yourself as more global? Because now you're traveling to 6 different continents, you're doing a bunch of these things. So how do you view yourself?
I think at heart, I'm still Canadian. Even when I'm abroad, when people hear my English, they keep making fun of things. Like when I say about, it's like the about instead of like about, right? So there's always that in me. I do love to travel. I have this app called Flighty. It's my favorite app in the world. It tracks like all the flights that you have. And so I think I think I'll be over 300 flights by the end of this year over my entire period of life. I've always been fascinated by different cultures. So for me, it's my identity is Canadian, but my dreams are sort of global. I want to travel as much as I can because when you see things from a different perspective and you come back, it changes the way you view your home. It changes the way you do business, changes the way you interact with people. And so all my life has just been about going as far away as possible. For example, I went to Australia for school because I wanted to try out, a new culture for studying. I went to Germany for an exchange. I went to Hong Kong for an exchange. For my Antler program, I explicitly chose the Middle East because I've never been there before, instead of Toronto, which also had a cohort around the same time. So it's always just about trying my best to learn from people that I haven't met before, right? And getting as much perspective as possible.
That makes sense. And you traveled a lot, like 48 countries, 6 continents, and you've said that it's people that make the place. And kind of curious where that belief comes from. Is that from experience, or is that from is there a specific point in time where you turned that belief?
Yeah, I think it comes from the experience. So what happens is I travel to a new country. And there's two ways you go about traveling, right? Either you're there for vacation or you're there for work. So let's say you're going to Cancun for a vacation, right? You land in Cancun, you go straight to your resort, you spend 7 days there, it's all inclusive, it's very nice. You don't really experience the culture that much. Everything is sort of put on show for you. It's not like a true Mexican culture as you would experience if you were like walking the streets of Mazatlan, for example, right? But when you go for business and you're there for meetings, you're there for meetups, you're there to run events. Like for example, this time I went to China, I ran an event in Hangzhou. I literally landed 3 a.m. the night before, went straight to the event, did the event, and then went back to my hotel to sleep. So I didn't really have a chance to explore the city at all, right? Which means technically I shouldn't have experienced the culture at all, but I did because I met so many people along the way. And during that event, it was the people that I interacted with the most. And that's sort of where the belief comes in, where the people make the place, right? You don't go back to Hangzhou if you don't know anyone there, right? Because, I didn't go there for the vacation in the first place. I went there for the event. And now I want to go back again because I want to see the people that I met at the event. not because I want to visit Hangzhou as a city. And that might not be the case if I were to want to go back to Cancun, which maybe it's like, I like the resort, right? Not because of the people that I met in Cancun. So there's always a difference in the way you travel and how you perceive a place. But for me, really, the people make the place, because without the people, the place doesn't really have meaning to it.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm also curious on you've coded this thing called the return flight theory. Kind of curious what you mean by that, and if there was an actual time it hit you.
Well, I wouldn't say I coded it. I'd be taking too much credit. I saw it on an Instagram story. Somebody said like return flight theory was basically when you go abroad for an extended period of time and you come back to your home, which should be something that's familiar to you, but you realize that everything seems different and it doesn't seem like home anymore. And the reason for that is because you see so much abroad that's different. You learn their ways, you sort of adapt to that culture, and the perspective completely shifts because you've had that experience. And so when you come back, you're able to see both the good and bad things about your home that you weren't able to see before because you were just so comfortable and used to it. And so my belief is that when you go abroad, you're not only learning from the perspective of people that are in the country that you're going to, you're also opening up your own way of thinking such that when you come back, you can see your home in a different way, in a way that others can't see. So it really is an advantage in many ways, because this isn't something that you can sort of just turn on while you're still in one place. You really do have to go out and explore somewhere else and come back to sort of feel that shift in perspective.
Yeah, for sure. What would you say to the people that really have never experienced that kind of dynamic shift?
It's life-changing. And like, it doesn't matter how much I tell you about it. I don't think you'll ever get it unless you experience it yourself. So I'd say anybody who has the opportunity to should just pick any place in the world that's different enough and just go and live there for a month or two, whatever it is, working holiday or join an accelerator or sleep at someone's hacker house. I don't know, anything. And then just come back, and then you'll understand that when you feel that return flight theory as you land back home. It's not something that I think can be described really well with words. You really just have to go and experience it for yourself.
Okay, makes sense. Curious. So you kind of talk about a few things openly, like Mensa, poetry, languages, the countries you've been to. What do you think? There's something about you that, I mean, you're public enough. You're a community figure. You're a community builder. What do you think that people actually don't know about you? Kind of curious about that, or just miss at first sight.
I think I put on a pretty good show for people that like. I just share like all my successes. I talk about my failures as well, selectively. But honestly, like at heart, I'm a very simple person. Like, it doesn't seem that complicated at all. I just like to do things that make me feel happy. People might think, you know, when they read my bio for the first time, that I'm doing all these things and it's going to be super tiring. And I have all these ambitions, but really I do things that matter to me. And when you do things that matter to you, it doesn't matter how many hours you spend on it or how much effort you put into it. It really feels effortless. So people usually like ask me questions like, don't you get exhausted? Don't you burn out? Things like that. But no, it's like, pick things you're passionate about and do them. Don't do things that society thinks are valuable. Do things that you think are valuable. And then you'll be the best at those things because you're so passionate about it. And then it won't be a burden and you're going to be good at something, right? So I think it's the wide belief that as a founder or as somebody who just does things, you're exhausting yourself, but it really isn't true. I think it really comes down to how much you love what you're doing.
I mean, if you like what you're doing, it's not really effort, right?
Yeah. Sorry, that might have
kind of curious about your first event. No, that makes sense for me. I agree with that. Like if I'm having fun, I don't think anything is effort. So like you can take more pain when you're having fun, right? Also, like the first event, I'm kind of curious about your first event that really blew up this year in February.
Yeah.
Talk me through how you and Sukpal ran the event, how it even came out, and yeah.
Sure. So I started running events in January. My first ever event was in Calgary. Just by virtue of it being my home, I wanted to do my first event here. It all started when I was in Australia for school. I met this guy called Joshua Crowley. He runs Cursor events in Sydney, and I attended one of them. And for the first time, I didn't turn around. So I used to go to events because I knew that they were valuable, but then I would be scared. I would, show up and I wouldn't know anybody there, and then I would just turn around and go home. I'd be like, this isn't the place for me. I feel a lot of imposter syndrome. I don't know how to talk to anyone, right? But then I realized, look, that event was super inspiring. I was comfortable enough to talk to people, and I realized if the host is good, I mean, anybody can sort of like feel at home at an event. So I wanted to do the same thing back home because Calgary didn't have a cursor scene at the time. It didn't have much of a tech scene at all, to be honest. So I applied to be a cursor ambassador. Josh probably put in a good word for me, and then I did my first event in Calgary. About 50 people came. And then after that, I went to Toronto, which had sort of a break in events as well. I was like, oh, the last event was in November. Why aren't there any more events? And Sukpal had just moved in from Ottawa, and we were sort of connected. You know, somebody was like, you guys should meet. So we met, we talked about what we wanted to do with the community. And we're like, okay, why don't we try running our own cursor event here? Let's bring it back, right? So same idea, trying to create an environment where people are comfortable enough to share, comfortable enough to attend, even if they're first time cursor users, even if they've never attended an event before. We want it to be as welcoming as possible. So we set a goal. We're like, okay, it'd be great if we could get 50 people in this room, right? 100 max. So we went and found venues that, you know, sort of fit 50 to 100 people. Ended up finding a 250 person venue through my university connections, being a U of T alumni. And we are like, okay, whatever. If it's 50 people in a 250 person room, that's fine, right? So we booked it and then we put up a Luma page. And within like a week, I think 300 people had signed up. And we're like, oh my gosh, there's so many people that are interested in this thing. It's actually not that hard. And so we're like, okay, you know what? Let's just accept as many of these people as possible and give people a chance, right? So we ended up having, I think, over 250 people show up to the event at one point, and people loved it because it was super low lift, super casual. I think a lot of events, they have too much structure in them. For example, people would sell products at the end of the event, right? That's sort of how B2B events go anyways. You have the event and then you have the sale at the end.
Yeah.
But with this event, people were asking like, well, where's the part where you sell me to something? And I'm like, well, there isn't a part where I sell you something. It was really just a meetup. And so I think that's what made the community really fall in love with our events and really pushed me to do these events monthly. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Kind of curious what, I'm not sure if you know that, I'm actually, let's just talk about it. Kind of curious how that went from those singular events to, is Just Do Things kind of connected to it in any way, or kind of curious how all of that links together? And
yeah, I think so. Just Do Things stems from one of the principles we had when we ran these events, right? We wanted to make sure that anybody who attended the event felt compelled enough to go and build something that they could take home and show their friends and family. And that's because with AI, you really can do these kind of things. You know, hackathons in the past, you would have to be a computer science student. You'd have to spend 24 hours coding, you know, nonstop, eating pizza, sleeping on the floor, sort of thing. But now you could just take an idea and then it could turn into something that you could actually play with in 30 minutes, right? Sometimes even less. And I don't think a lot of people know that that's possible. They still think of, you know, computer science as something that you have to spend years learning, whereas really you can be anyone with an idea and you could build something. And so I know that all of us have dreams as kids. You know, we've always, you know, it's like when your teacher asks you, what do you want to be when you grow up? Somebody's going to be like, oh, I want to build rockets. Somebody's going to be like, oh, I want to be a naval officer or a police officer, or, you know, I want to run a company, things like that. Like you always have these dreams, and they're dreams because historically they were unattainable unless you really put in a lot of effort. But now you could have a 5-year-old kid, and we've had kids come to our events who has this idea of like some crazy, you know, car that flies backwards or whatever. I don't know. And you could just tell the AI that you want to build that, and then it could build it for you and you could visualize it. And so that dream is no longer a dream, it's reality, right? And so what we want is for as many people as possible to realize that, look, all you need is an idea and 30 minutes, and you can build something that you can take home and show your friends and family. And that the only thing stopping you is yourself, because you're trying to convince yourself not to do it because it's too hard, or it takes too long, or you don't know if it's going to work. You're afraid it's going to fail, right? So what? You know, 30 minutes of your time, if it fails, it fails. But what if it works? You've turned your dreams into reality. So Just Do Things is a newsletter which we want to use to sort of inspire people to just do things. If you literally just go and do it, you'll be surprised how far you'll get, and you'll realize, wow, it really was myself holding myself back this whole time. And so it ties back to the events as well, right? The events is how we show people that you can just do things. Just Do Things is how we inspire people to go and do it.
Okay, that's interesting. Kind of curious how you go about curating the room then.
Yeah. So
Or
we want the room
yeah.
to be a mix of people who are technical and non-technical. And the reason for that is, yes, you can build anything you want, but a technical person will still, I guess, think in ways that you might not think of just because of their experience working in the field. And they can sort of accelerate you when you have your idea and you try and build something, right? So everyone has great ideas. Non-technical people sometimes have even greater ideas because they're more creative, right? Now, I don't want to generalize, but when you put people that have different backgrounds in the same room in a group together, they sort of complement each other in sort of what kind of ideas they can come up with. And you have someone who doesn't know the boundaries of coding and AI. So they'll think of ideas that are outside the box. They'll think of things where, you know, they just care about the idea. They don't care about the constraints. Whereas a technical person might have constraints built into their minds already. Oh, you can't build something like this. It's not going to work, right? There's security risks if you build it this way. And they're sort of confined into that space, into that mindset. And so the non-technical person unlocks the breadth of the ideas that they can come up with. And then the technical person sort of hones in on that and dives into it, right? So I think when we curate the room, we want that equal split so that the people who are building things together, they're able to get the best of both worlds, both the creative side, both the thinking outside of the box, and also the technical part of it, the practical part of things. And we've seen that in just 30 minutes, people come up with really beautiful things.
That makes sense. And back to the newsletter, kind of curious where the idea of it even comes from. Is it like just something you were seeing recurringly in your meetups? Is it something personal to you? And why a newsletter of all things?
Yeah. So actually a year ago when I was thinking, so I've only been building for a year to be perfectly frank. Like I used to work as a software engineer, but to build my own things, it's only been since last July. Actually, next Tuesday is my 1 year anniversary
Okay.
of when I built my first app. So back when I was building my first app, I was thinking,
Congratulations. Oh my God.
Thank you. I was thinking like, what kind of business should I start and why? And I was just doing a lot of brainstorming with ChatGPT at the time. And the newsletter was one of the things that came up. And it's sort of been parked for a while since then. But I always knew that I love to write. Right. That was my favorite subject in school was writing. And I love to read other people's writing, especially if it's inspirational. Because when you read something that really resonates with you, you're able to project that to your audience. So the return flight theory thing, I read about it on an Instagram story and I turned it into a post right away because I resonated with it and I knew that other people were. So the newsletter is a way for me to sort of write about my experiences and what I learned and hopefully inspire others to try out the same path, do the same things, maybe even write a newsletter of their own. I think Suk had a similar take on it as well. He's always wanted to do some sort of content and he also has a lot of great ideas. And so we decided to team up to write a newsletter together. Part of it is because now we only have to each spend half our time on it instead of, the full time. And also because it helps us reach a wider audience, right? We want more people to experience the joy of being able to do things without overthinking too much. There's this thing called analysis paralysis, which is really the number one, I think, blocker for most people when they try to do something. It's like they have all these great ideas and they just never act on them because they talk themselves out of it. I think there's a lot of value in everyone. And it's a shame that value isn't shown to the world because they don't do something. So the more that people do things because of
I think
us,
it's like, sorry, I was just going to say, I was like, sometimes it's the saying that action is better than inaction sometimes, even if the action is an incorrect action. Like at least you get some information, right?
Exactly. There's this theory. I don't know if it's theory or not. This one I might have coined. But if you don't push on the wall, it never pushes back, right? So when you go and do something and you fail, at least you know where not to push. And I think that's more valuable than leaving the wall intact, if you know what I mean. Right? Because some people, they might think, okay, I don't want to push on the wrong part of the wall, right? Because I don't want the failure to affect me in a negative way. But if you want to succeed, you have to break that wall. And that might mean pushing on a lot of spots that don't work. But would you rather have a wall that never breaks and looks pristine? Or would you rather have all these scars of pushing on the wall and it pushes back, but eventually you break that wall? right? Which is really what the goal is.
That makes sense. Kind of curious. I mean, kind of even curious about the pace you move at now. Since you've gone to, I guess, 6 different cities in 11 days. Like, kind of curious why that kind of a pace? Is that just like a visa thing? Yeah.
So I'm quite restless. If I'm like in a city for a week, it feels like I'm here for too long. I've always been somebody who likes to move. Like even when I was in university, every time I would have a break, I would go for a drive. I would drive somewhere new, because I just needed to see that change in scenery. I've always needed new things to sort of stimulate me, right? So I think for me, it was just about moving at a pace that I was comfortable with. And also, it's really cool to talk about when you move fast, and we meet a lot of people. They're like, didn't I just meet you yesterday? Why aren't you in this city anymore? It's like, oh, because I already moved on, right? I really love to travel. The idea that you can be somewhere really far away in a short amount of time is fascinating to me. It's a privilege that we have in our modern society that we wouldn't have otherwise had, let's say 200 years ago, before the planes, before the ships, right? Or well, ships were a while, but not many that could travel across the ocean. So I think as humans, we were always obsessed with speed. We were always obsessed with moving fast. Finally, we can do that. And so it's probably biological, but I just allow that to take over and I enjoy it.
Makes sense. Just let the animal instincts take over at that point.
Exactly.
Kind of curious what then from all of this, what led on to Lenovix. I know,
Yeah.
I think Michael was working on it before, and then I'm kind of curious how you were brought on, what you're planning to do, and yeah.
So Michael's been working on Lenovix for about a year and a half, I think, before I joined. Maybe a year. And we were both in the Antler program. He was in the Toronto cohort. I was in the one in Dubai. And while I was in Dubai, I did a lot of user research for my other product. And Michael was one of the people who I called a lot of times. I think I met with him 3 or 4 times to do user discovery. And so he knew about my journey and sort of what I was going through. And he had heard about my breakup with my co-founder at Antler, which means that my odds of getting the investment were already quite low. And so that's when he pitched, why don't you join Lenovix? So kudos to him. I think he really knows how to grab onto an opportunity. But when he told me about the idea, I thought it was so obvious. Like, yeah, why don't we need this, right? Or obviously every company needs this. And so for me, I found an opportunity to join a startup that I believed in and in a leadership role, which is what I've always wanted, because I always wanted to sort of craft my own path forward, right? So there's this thing they say where it's like startup founders are unemployable because they'll never like work for someone. I think I sort of resonate with that as well. And so I guess let's talk about a little bit what Lenovix is. Now it's pitch mode. 7% of all companies, or 7% of revenue from all companies is spent paying fines, right? And that's when like the government fines you for breaching some sort of privacy act or some sort of regulation. And Lenovix's goal is to reduce that. And it's just such an obvious value proposition. It's like, wow, I get to pay less money in fines. Obviously, I want Lenovix, right? And there's actually a reason why these companies pay a lot in fines. It's because they can't afford to hire lawyers to do the due diligence when they onboard vendors. So when they use a third-party tool, they're sending client data through it, maybe by accident, and it gets leaked. They're the ones that are on the hook for the fines, right? And that could have been avoided if they did the due diligence, but lawyers are expensive and they take a long time. And so Lenovix helps legal teams do it more. It's do it quickly and do it at a lower rate. So these companies now have more of an incentive to actually hire a legal team to do this work for them. And so they're not skipping the due diligence, and so they're reducing their risk. The legal teams are happy because they can onboard more clients now that they can do the work faster. And they can charge them less, which means they have more market penetration. So Lenovix sort of solves the problem for both of them. That's sort of like, it was so obvious to me that this was going to work. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of curious. Is the user like a legal team within a company, or would it be like a separate law firm?
So it can be both. It can be both a legal team that's part of a company. Those are like usually larger enterprises that have their own legal teams. Or it can be law firms that service smaller clients, like a startup that wants a one-time due diligence deal, right? So yeah, we target the the law side of things, the legal side of things, and then they sort of use our services to deliver better services to their clients.
That makes sense, actually. Kind of curious how your product affects pricing for especially lawyers. I think that's something I've been noticing and talking about a lot with lawyers as well. Especially with the advent of AI, they're a profession that used to charge per hour. How do you think that might even work going forward?
I think there's two ways this can go. Either they continue to charge by the hour, but they can charge more per hour, but finish the work in less hours, right? So for the lawyer, they get to actually make more money, but for the clients, they get faster delivery times and a better service. So I guess it's a supercharger for them because it allows them to do their work more quickly and it makes their job more easier, right? The other way I think it could go is if they started charging per case instead, and then they tried to finish these cases as quickly as possible, which is also possible, right? Because now Lenovix allows them to do what would have taken a month in a day. And so then what they could do is they could onboard as many clients as possible and just finish these cases with AI quickly. So lawyers are probably quite happy with our tool. It really makes their time actually worth more. And we understand from the beginning that we don't want to replace lawyers, right? Imagine trying to sell to a legal team and you're telling them that, your job's going to go away if you use us. Good luck selling it, right?
Yeah. Good luck selling anything when the threat is their job.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm kind of curious, since you've done a lot of different things from like I'm kind of curious how you pronounce your first startup. Is it Diamante?
Diaminate.
Diamante?
Diaminate. Yeah.
Yeah, from Diaminate, Just Do Things, and Lenovix. Kind of curious how you foresee like all of them, or even just Do Things and Lenovix going together. And I guess I'm including Cursor in your other one as well, because I am assuming you're not going to stop hosting events, even if you're not touch wood, you're not a Cursor ambassador anymore. You might be hosting your own events. I think you've got a big enough following at this point that you can't just do that. But kind of curious how you foresee like all these things joining together.
Yeah. So Touchpoint, I'm still a Cursor ambassador, but I think I want to keep doing this because people love our events, right? And if we suddenly stopped hosting them, I think there would be a gap in the community and people would sort of be disappointed in that. I also see events as a really good way to continue connecting with the community. Just being a host, it's really, really easy to reach a lot of people in a meaningful way. I think everything does connect together. My belief is that community is the number one go-to-market tool these days. In-person events are some of the most popular ways that companies now do their go-to-market, and it's something that's picked up a lot recently. So I would say Just Do Things is our way of reaching people that haven't shown up in person yet. The events are a way of deepening that connection when they do show up. And then all that will translate to a network that serves well in the future, right? For everybody that's attending and everybody that's involved. Everything in this world runs around connections, right? Like everything that you do, you almost always need a partner to do it with. It's really hard to do things by yourself. And those connections aren't built on a Google Meets call, right? They might be started on a Google Meets call, but they're built when you sit down in person, you have a coffee chat, or you go out for food, or you attend an event together. And when that community grows and it becomes more and more interconnected, the rate at which the community can output things increases as well. So if I can help every builder in this city build faster, they can also help me build faster, right? Lenovix isn't going to go and build everything ourselves, right? We might hire somebody to do our hiring. We might hire somebody to do our accounting, our finances, our legal, right? And where am I going to look for these people? Obviously, I'm going to look for them in my community because I know these people better. And how are they going to be able to deliver this to me is if I enable them to grow as well. And that's what ecosystems are all about. It's us growing together. That's why San Francisco is such a big ecosystem, right? Silicon Valley. That's why everything's concentrated there because the velocity at which you can build is much faster when you're there. You're still the same person, right? You're still the same team, but you're just at a place that allows you to go faster. And that's really interesting to me because why should it matter where in the world you are, right? You're just on some piece of land on this earth. Why does it matter where you're building? And really, it's the people that are there and the community that's built there. And so I want to do the same thing in Toronto. I don't think we should all go to San Francisco if we want to build fast. We're giving a lot of money to US Airlines. I'm just kidding. But yeah, like it's not hard to build a
But
community.
it's almost like when, as you talk about it, like a community, when you have a bunch of people in person or something, like energy bounces off of each other. And if I'm doing something, you might see it, get inspiration. You do something, I might get inspiration. And then you just have a bunch of high energy things going on rather than, yeah, I get that. So do you view community as a moat for you?
Maybe not for Lenovix, but for my personal brand, definitely. Because like, think about this. Like when you attend an event, maybe you'll meet 10 people max. You connect with like 10 people on LinkedIn, for example. And that I think somebody who can connect with 10 people is already somebody who's super outgoing and really good at connections. But as a host, let's say you have an event that 2,000 people registered for. You've connected with 2,000 people in some degree or another, right? And no amount of event attending is going to beat that. Right? You have to attend 200 events to get to that level. So running community is definitely a moat. Running a community requires a certain type of energy. It requires humble bragging skills, I think, where people are comfortable enough to show up because you're humble enough, but then they're inspired when you start bragging, right? You're not like that arrogant person who puts people off. It's like, screw this guy. I don't want to listen to what he has to say. But you're also not that timid guy who's like too humble and there's nothing to say, right? So there's a delicate balance in that. I think that energy is difficult to master. I don't think I've mastered it just yet. But I think it's the energy that's required to build a strong community. And for anyone's personal brand, that's the kind of energy that sort of accelerates you.
That makes sense. Then kind of curious where you're building Lenovix going forward, where you're building, like, at least not going forward, at least for the next couple of weeks, the months. Are you just trying to get users? Like, kind of curious where you guys are.
Yeah, so there's a couple different things we're trying at the moment. One is in August, we're going to run our first event. It's going to be ticketed. What we're going to do is we're going to have a panel of some of the top engineers in the city. And then we're going to have an audience of just lawyers, right? So lawyers by trade, they're not technical. So they know about AI, they've read all about it, but they've never really used it to the degree at which the engineers are using it. And that panel is a way for them to ask the engineers questions about how AI affects their field so that they can have a better understanding of the potential of AI, you know, things around safety, things around security, things around speed. And I'm going to make it as provocative as possible. So it sort of becomes a debate between lawyers and engineers. I think that would be super interesting as a go-to-market strategy. And it's something that we're going to try. The other thing is, while I was in China, I realized there's a huge demand in China for companies wanting to expand abroad. Because as you know, there are a lot of restrictions of Chinese companies operating in North America, but a lot of them want to do business here. And so they spin up subsidiaries over here that are wholly owned in the region. And they face a lot of issues with regulation because they're not used to it. So what they do is they hire legal teams that specialize in moving companies abroad. And these legal teams help make sure they're compliant, right? But a lot of the work that's done is quite manual because these teams are based in China. And when they want to access tools abroad, they have to jump through a lot of hoops. I feel like Lenovix can really help accelerate these legal teams. And this is a huge untapped market. And the benefit of it is that I can speak the language quite fluently. Actually, there's a difference between speaking the language and then speaking it like a native, right? Like I'm at the level where I'm able to say, or I'm able to speak Chinese in a way where they can't tell that I'm from abroad. I think that really helps with generating meaningful connections over there as well. And so we might try out working with legal teams over in China as well. So in end of October, I think I might go there for 3 weeks or so, just to see if I can build up those connections a bit further.
Okay, so you're going back to China.
Yeah. I really fell in love with it. A lot of the people I met there I want to see again. And I was only there for 11 days and I met like 550 people. So definitely need a little bit more time.
Curious, what exactly did you do in China? I know I saw a picture of, I mean, it looked like a nice, a spa, a hotel, or there was a picture of that. Kind of curious how you met 550 people.
So I ran 3 events back to back, Cafe Cursors, and each one of those had about 150 people show up. And that sort of event doesn't happen super often in China. So when we ran it, a lot of people were super interested. and they were really engaging. And I met a lot of people who were actually like super skilled in using Cursor and building their own AI tools. And there were a lot of products there that I would have loved to see here in North America as well. And so I took them to after parties as well. One of them, I took them to a restaurant for some dinner, and then the other one, I took them to like a cocktail party at a rooftop bar. I think people really open up when they're at a casual setting like that, whereas at an event, they might try to come off as more professional. And so that's where I found the most meaningful connections. And that's also where I found people who really wanted to make meaningful connections because they were the people that showed up to those events. After I ran those events, I went to Inner Mongolia. A friend of ours was there. So he took us around. The culture up north in China is that if you're a guest, you don't have to worry about anything. You just sort of do what they say. And you just follow them around. So I learned to ride a horse with zero safety gear. That's also the fastest way to learn, by the way, is not to go through the safety training. You just go on and you go, and then you just go as fast as you can. And then I helped them dig they installed this pipe around their home and I like helped them fill the thing back up. So I did some heavy lifting as well.
Okay.
And then we had a lot of good food. We went to this beautiful river. Inner Mongolia is similar to Calgary in that it's like a prairie. And so just had a ton of fun there. It's the first time I was in the north of China where the culture is quite different from the south. And so I met a lot of friends there as well. And then
Is
I
it
went
more
back to
rural?
Yeah, it's super rural. Traditionally, it's like agricultural. So everybody there is sort of like a farmer or they do animal husbandry and things like that.
What kind of curious what made you take that jump from your job to your first startup?
So it's actually really hard to find a job. And it's also really hard once you're in that job because there's so many people waiting to, join the company as well. So I think these days companies are super competitive in the internal culture. It's not like, for example, 10 years ago where you could really just relax. You do your 9 to 5, you go home, you do your thing, come back, and your job would most likely still be there. Now it's like, if you're not pushing yourself 110%, somebody's waiting to take over your role, right? And so there's part of that culture there that I didn't really like. Also, the vision that the founder had, I mean, it's not a bad vision, but it might not be the vision that you have of how things are going to be, right? And to be fair, it's their company, so they can take it the way they want it to. But it's really hard to work on something if you don't fully 100% believe in it. And this is actually a problem that a lot of startups have because when they hire, they're trying to hire people who are 100% in the company. But the reality is everybody has different opinions and it's really hard to find somebody who's 100% aligned. And so I realized that I could never work for somebody and be happy about it. And so I wanted to start a company. Yeah.
That makes sense. So now then, kind of curious what would have to be true for you to make it like go back and look at it all and be like, it's worth it.
Like worth starting a company?
Worth quitting your job, like, yeah, doing whatever you want now. You're almost on like a free fall, right?
Yeah, I think the way I operate is like I just take the risk without thinking too much about it. I have the belief that an exceptional person succeeds no matter what environment they're put in. Because they'll always be better. And not better as in they're innately better as in they know how to take the situation at hand and maximize it, right? And even if maximizing it still means failure, they fail lighter than somebody else who doesn't really care. So I'm of the belief that there are things that I'm good at and it wouldn't make sense for me not to utilize those strengths. And one of the things I'm good at is taking action quickly and pivoting quickly and not being emotionally tied to something. So a lot of the time people are held back because they're emotionally tied to what they're doing. So they take longer to sort of quit. They take longer to get started. They take longer to make decisions. And so I'm really blessed with the fact that I really have zero emotions in that sense, that I can just make decisions based solely on the numbers or on the vibe. And so I don't think I'd ever regret a decision that I make because I'm always able to find a way that, given my strengths, I'm able to maximize the opportunity that comes out of it. I think what I would regret is if I didn't take that step, if I talked myself out of it and then sometime down the road, I was like, I wish I had done that and just seen what would have come out of it.
Then do you just, I guess at the end of your career, what do you want to really be known for? Like, do you want to be known as a community builder? Do you want to be like, or I don't know, do you even still want to build businesses at the end of your career? Or do you want to build like cities or, yeah, how are you even thinking about what you want to do?
My long-term goal, I think this is gonna come up crazy. Ever since I was a kid, I've always wanted to be a politician
Okay.
because I wanted to influence policy in a way that is able to align with the needs of the people. I always it's tough because every politician thinks that way and then they get into politics and then things change. But
You can be an evil. Sometimes you have to be a little bit evil to, do the good. At least
yeah,
that's my opinion.
exactly. I believe in outcomes more than process, which a lot of people might not agree with. I think I think there's a way I see society functioning that is good, and I want that outcome to be true. And maybe the processes aren't that good. Maybe they can be. We'll see. But I don't think there's. I don't think you can influence policy meaningfully without having influence in society. And that influence can come in many ways. It can come in community building. It can come in running a company. It can come in writing. Right. I think at the very, very, very end of the career, of my career, I want to be a politician. I think now I want to be known for somebody who is able to drive outcomes for others. So let's say you need help doing something. I want it to be like the first person you think of is me. I'm the person that can help you do that thing. I'm the person who can help you take the next step. I feel really good when I'm able to help someone.
Okay. So kind of like a fixer for your community.
Yeah, yeah. Somebody who gets things done. Somebody who drives outcomes for others.
That makes sense. Well, that is all the questions I had. It was actually great talking to you. Let me just stop the recording.
Sounds good. No, this is really cool.